If my coming out journey has taught me anything, it's that telling one story is paramount to working toward self-acceptance, self-love, and embracing hope in a world that glamorizes cisgender and heterosexual persons. Many queer people will affirm the importance of storytelling, as coming out isn't a one and done kind of thing. It is a lifelong process. A few summers ago, I was at a conference for women religious. I was newly out and struggling to navigate being queer and being in religious life. In a sea of 800 sisters, I decided to wear a rainbow pin as an outward sign of my queerness. I had such a desire to be seen as my authentic self, and the pin helped communicate my inner truth. As I settled in at my assigned table, a sister at the table introduced herself. After exchanging a few pleasantries, her eyes drifted toward my pin and she said, "They're my people." To which I excitedly replied, "Mine too." At that moment, I felt truly seen and safe, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief because I had found someone with whom I could share my story. Throughout the days of the conference, we got to know more about each other. On the last day, which was a Friday, I asked her, "So when did you come out?" She looked at me and smiled and half laughing said, "When was the last time I came out? Tuesday." "When did I first come out?" "About 30 years ago." Her response still stays with me to this day because it speaks to the reality of what we as queer people have to do on a regular, if not daily basis, which is to name and claim our authentic queer selves in a society where heterosexuality is almost always assumed and queerness seen as the exception. Sharing our coming out stories form us as a community. They describe the pain and the heartbreak we experience when we are rejected or questioned by loved ones. They also speak of the joy and exhilaration of discovering and embracing our queerness. Our storytelling allows us to express the deepest parts of ourselves, which enables us to then strengthen our connections and advocate for inclusion and our place at the table. During this Advent season, we hear many familiar stories that have formed us over the years as Christians. These beloved stories contain elements that we hear also in our coming out stories, elements of heartache and pain, joy and triumph. Tonight, specifically, we hear of the peaceful kingdom where seemingly opposite beings live together in harmony. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the baby and the viper share space. We hear of Mary's bold and courageous yes to God, a yes that was spoken and consented to without consulting her betrothed, a choice in which she practiced bodily autonomy and allowed herself to be vulnerable for the sake of liberation, justice, and hope. We hear that in the beginning, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We learn of a God who wanted to draw close to us and be with us in our humanity. Some years, it may be hard to embrace these stories of hope. We may find ourselves struggling with family, the political climate in our respective countries, and the violence that continues to be perpetrated against our queer community in the media, in schools, and in workplaces. We may wonder if the peaceable kingdom is simply a fairy tale, or if God is still present among us. Yet, we must keep in mind that the scriptures we read during Advent are ancient stories of hope. Many of them were written in times of tumult and despair. Yet the writer of Isaiah believed in the peaceable kingdom of equity and inclusion. Gabriel came to Mary during a time of oppression to invite her into writing a new story for the lowly. The Word became flesh to show us new ways to be in relationship with one another. The hope the scripture writers speak of isn't flowery or lofty. It's gritty. It's hard. It's stubborn. It refuses to give in or give up. It speaks of possibilities and resilience. For us, this ancient hope helps us navigate life as queer persons. Our queer hope lies in the stories we share, the experiences we learn from, and the God who transcends time and space to come close to us wherever we are. It reminds us that the day will come when the peaceable kingdom becomes our reality. The trans person will be the guest of the conservative. The non-binary and cisgender persons will be guided by a love for one another as human beings. The drag queens and children will be able to read together in libraries without fear. Advent is a period of formation and preparing ourselves for the coming of the one who liberates the captives and brings unconditional love to the marginalized. Advent has the potential to help us build a foundation of hope that will sustain us through the coming year if we are willing to allow ourselves to be transformed by the power of story. As my friend pointed out at the conference, she was still coming out after 30 years, yet she knew her story was still ongoing, still deepening, with new insights emerging year after year. In a similar way, we are still mining the depths of Advent, telling the story of expecting hope, sitting in holy darkness as we await the coming of the light.